and we did trains. It was good for them to, we didn't have a car the whole time. It was great.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hi, Erin.
Welcome back.
I gotta get a fan going. Excuse me for a second.
Yes. We still have a couple minutes.
I think the only person I didn't see that didn't respond was Tom.
So I didn't hear from Tom. Is that who you said?
Yeah, that's what I said too.
Okay. And we're just waiting on Martin as well. He said he was going to join us.
Hey, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm just getting situated with the baby over here. I'm here, but I might be on mute for another minute or two.
Sure.
That's
We're
fine.
still waiting for another minute or two anyways. Let's see. Oh, there's Tom.
I logged on and then accidentally logged off.
Oops. I think I just muted you, Maria. Welcome aboard. You have to unmute if you want to talk.
No worries. I logged in and then accidentally logged myself off.
Well, that's why I couldn't find you. It's a Monday, all right. Well, let's see. We have 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
If you'd like to get started, Madam Chair.
I'd like to open the Inland Wetlands Watercourse Agency meeting of Monday, July 10th, 2023 at 7:01 p.m. It looks like our first agenda item is a call to order for attendance. So do I read that out or does everyone else? I can't remember. I watched Joe do this.
Yes, well, so,
yeah.
Just the new.
Pardon?
It's just the new format on the agenda center. Yeah, it's just basically calling it to order, Kayla, and identifying which of our commissioners are here. And Martin just joined us, so I think we're all set, and we don't have any alternates currently, right?
Okay, so we have Lee Schumacher, Anna Loss, Tom Clancy, Martin Brogy, and myself, Kayla Freidenberg, attending the meeting as full voting members tonight. I was gone last month, but I have invested 3.5 hours of my time in watching the meeting. So I feel pretty comfortable. I feel like I was there. So I feel like I will be able to participate in our continuation of the public meeting for application 23-11 Munkertown Road, which is our first agenda item, is continuing that public hearing.
And Madam Chair, I did have a request from our applicants at 175 Fort Path Road, which is David Milano, on behalf of David, his attorney, Chris McKeon, requesting that perhaps the commission would entertain shuffling the order of the agenda since they are submitting a request to table to the August meeting. Mr. McKeon did submit a letter and is here via cell phone if the commission had any questions. Essentially, what they're doing is waiving the statutory timeframe. Well, before we get into that, is that something you would entertain to listen to that, to request a reshuffle of the order before the continuation of the public hearing? Since I think they just anticipated it was a quick one.
Okay, yes, I'd be happy to entertain that.
Okay, I think we just need to do a motion for that.
Okay, well,
I move we shuffle the agenda around and let the applicant for 2312 175 Fort Path Road, I guess, proposed tabling the discussion that we had planned to hear tonight to next month.
I'll second that.
all right. So we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor? Raise your
Aye.
hand. Okay, all in favor? So moved. So we could have Mr. McKeon
Thank you.
request.
Chris, I know that you're driving. Are you, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Did you want to just briefly recap your request to the agency and?
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for taking me. I'll be very brief. My name is Chris McKeon. I represent the applicant. My office address is 900 Chapel Street in New Haven. I live in Madison at 31 Hotchkiss Lane. The applicant was before the agency back in May. Since that time, they have engaged Todd Anderson, who completed a detailed survey of the site, including elevations and as-built, as the agency had requested back in May. There was quite a bit of work involved in that survey, and project engineer Michael Harkin didn't receive it until the Friday before 4th of July weekend. He is in the process of comparing that to the prior map that was before the agency and rerunning all of the drainage calculations and data. He just couldn't get to it before tonight's hearing. And so on Friday, I sent Aaron a letter or an email requesting a continuance to the August meeting and waiving any applicable deadlines so that we can appear before you in August with Mr. Harkin's work completed now that he has the detailed survey in his hands. So that is our request.
Okay, that sounds pretty clear cut. Do any of the agency members have questions for Mr. McKeon? No? Okay. Is this something we need to vote on, or do we just,
Just a request to table that.
okay,
It's August 7th is our next meeting.
great. Well, I'll make a motion that we table application 23-12 175 Fort Path Road to our August 7th meeting.
Second.
All right.
Third.
Lee has seconded. Got thirds. So all in favor of tabling until August? Yes. So it's unanimous. Great. So we will see you in August.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Chris.
Take care.
Okay. Now we can continue to the public hearing. So this is a continuance for application 23-11 Mungertown Road. My understanding is tonight we'll hear from Eric Davidson or Matt Davidson as well, right?
Yes,
Okay. And anybody from the public who didn't, I noticed nobody spoke last time. Perhaps someone wants to speak this time. And of course, commission members can ask questions as well. So we've received our third-party report from the Eric Davidson or Davison Environmental. And that's part of, and the applicant has responded in writing as well.
that's correct. We have received written comments from both Matt and Eric Davison. Matt is here with us tonight. And we have various members of the design team for the school here as well. George, you have been the one who has accepted presenting here. I would just ask that if anybody else is looking to contribute to the responses, to go ahead and raise hands. Okay, Will, I see you as well. Just in case there are any questions regarding revisions George will come through here. So I'm not sure who of, at this point, so we've had a presentation by the applicant. I don't know if Matt would like to go through the third-party reviews and then give the applicant an opportunity to respond to those. And then any questions that the agency has as well. Does that sound like a good process here?
I think that sounds like a plan.
Let me see, I lost Matt.
Yes. If maybe he didn't like that plan.
He did put them in writing. I just wasn't sure if he wanted to talk about them, but maybe he was calling in instead of on a Zoom. So maybe he's just switching. Here he comes. Okay, he's coming back over. Sorry about that. Matt, did you want to go through for the record your comments, your initial comments, or were you comfortable with just submitting your letter into the record? Can you hear us, Matt?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Okay, yep, yeah, now I can.
Sorry about that. I'm having technical difficulties. It might make the most sense, Darren, just to have, because the in the response letter from the applicant, they have the responses to our comments in there. It might be more efficient just to have them go through essentially our comment and then their response to it. I think the response to it is probably the most important part anyway.
Sure. Okay, Will, did you want to lead that? All right, did you want to share it, or you're
Yes.
have all capabilities? So I'll just let you kind of handle that, what you'd like to screen share.
I don't know why my video is not being enabled.
All right. Can Aaron and commission members, can you see my screen? I got a split screen with some plans on the right-hand side and the
Bottom right
response
corner.
letter on the left.
Yes.
All good. Okay, excellent. Let me get started for the record. Will Walter, professional engineer, representing the applicant, which is the Board of Ed, the civil engineer of record on the project, and I've got George Logan here, who is our soil scientist on the project. Just to give everybody very brief introduction and kind of let everybody know what has happened since the last time we met. So we met at the last meeting. We went through our plans. I'm not going to present anything new that I already presented. But I felt like it was a really good meeting. Nobody from the public commented. We probably had 3 or 4 comments from the commission members, which I feel like we answered. And then Matt had a couple of comments, verbal comments that we responded to verbally. But then last week we got his, or 2 weeks ago, we got his formal report. And so we've responded with a formal response letter as well as several plan changes. Also, since the last meeting, we have received 2 more approvals. We received formal approval of the septic system from Connecticut DPH. So now we've received formal approval from both the Madison Health Department and Connecticut Department of Public Health, which are the 2 permitting agencies have jurisdiction over the septic system. There's nobody else that needs to review it. So that septic system, which is a really big deal in this project, is a really complex design that's been formally and fully approved. So I thought that was important to mention that. The additional thing is the town engineer has reviewed these plans specific to stormwater. And that includes peak flows, that includes stormwater quality, that includes temporary erosion control. He had 3 comments. We responded to those, and the updated plans, which were submitted as a part of the response to this commission. He sent me an email today, and all of his concerns have been satisfied. So the plans that have been responded to this commission, the town engineer is fully accepted the plans in regards to stormwater quality, peak flows, and erosion control. All right, so what we're going to do is Mr. Davison had, I think, 10 or 12 comments. Some of them are specific to civil engineering, and some are specific to wetlands and George's scope of work and his expertise. So we're going to go through these, and I'll cover the ones that are specific to civil engineering, and George will cover the ones that are specific to his scope of work. And Matt, I'm just going to suggest that after we go through each one, if you have any questions, or if the commission has any questions, we can go through those one at a time, as opposed to us just running through all 10 or 12 and then circling back. I think it'd probably be a little bit better if we did that. So the first one I will take, and it says that Davison has reviewed the delineated wetland boundary and found it to be substantially correct. At its northernmost extent, the wetland boundary does not close to a property boundary. And then he's saying that the geothermal well field encroached over that boundary. And you can see over here, and I'm not going to go read word for word in the response, but essentially George's wetlands ended right here. And he didn't get back here because it was so thick and so nasty, but he visually observed and noted that the boundary extended essentially, it continued essentially up to the property line. In our last submission, we had the geothermal well field that encroached over like this. We have since modified that, and you can see now in orange, I'm showing the geothermal well field, and the yellow is where the wetlands delineation extends. So you can see we've responded to that comment by pulling the geothermal well field back to the west out of the extension of the wetland boundary. And I'll give a little pause if anybody has a question. Okay, George, you're going to take number 2.
Certainly. Good evening, everyone. This is George Logan, soil and wetland scientist, Marine Ecological Services. Good to be here before you. Maybe someday I'll be before you in person. I love that. We're hoping. So the second comment that was in the report had to do with, well, Matt thought that maybe there was he called it a general lack of biological data regarding sites' biological resource areas. And I think, and he can explain that with that, he was probably skewing and leaning more to the vernal pool question that we'll probably talk about a lot more as we go on. My comment is that, I've been doing this for 35 years, and the type of resource information that I provide is typically the same throughout all municipalities, unless it's a specific question that's raised. Basically, I provide what I provided. There's a good amount of information in the report itself, and we typically, as you probably saw in one of the attachments, we have what we call a wetland delineation characterization field form, where we put a goodly amount of information to describe and inventory the wetland. Now, the 2 times that it was out there was in August and in February. So I saw what I saw at those 2 times. And so we believe that we provided enough information, but I think the question of vernal pool was the one that was probably more prominent in Matt's view as he's looked at the site. So I think I'll just pop into question number 3, where Mr. Davidson says that, we characterize certain portions of the wetland as seasonally flooded, and he thought that maybe there was some potential vernal pools out there, and he indicated there were 2 areas where, based on hydrologic or indirect hydrologic observations, it was his opinion that those could potentially be vernal pool habitats embedded within the overall wetland. So the first one, which is I think the closest one to the wetland boundary, I saw that area a couple of times, obviously when I was delineating the wetland, and then in February also when it was more obvious based on the fact there was not a lot of vegetation to go through. And it was my opinion at that time, based on what I saw, that the potential for it to be a vernal pool was very low. So I did not mention it. The other one, which is further away, it's maybe another 100 feet from the wetland boundary, I did not see. So that was, I guess, the limit of my study area. So let's see. Again, August 2022 and February 2023 were the 2 times there. Okay, thanks, Will. So you see the one that's the closest one, PVP 1, potential vernal pool 1, and then the one that's further away, potential vernal pool 2. So the question obviously is, would there be a potential for an impact to these resources? And that's the critical question. So for PVP 1, by the way the plan was originally configured, we had our level spreader, which was one of the best management practices that we had there for the stormwater management system. No one would argue that water from there, as clean as it could possibly be, could still head for PVP number 1. It's usually not a good idea, even if stormwater is very well polished, to create a pathway directly to a vernal pool. That's a cardinal sin. So what has happened there, and you'll see it in the plans, is we said, okay, the solution would be obviously not to dump water to PVP 1, whether it is a vernal pool or not. And so the plans were reconfigured, and said level spreader has been now relocated about 100 feet in a southeasterly direction. Again, similar elevation as before based on contours. And my opinion, based on reviewing topography and also reviewing some of my photographs that I had, is that this discharge will not interfere with that potential vernal pool. That discharge will go into the side channel, which flows sometimes and sometimes it doesn't, which connects to the main stem of the river. So therefore, even if this was a potential vernal pool, which obviously I can't tell you whether it is or not, it's just, I wasn't there in the right time of year to see it. There would not be an adverse impact to that pool from discharge. So that's that particular area. Now, I think the other thing that I would have to say is that there's no disagreement whatsoever between Matt and Eric and myself that the functions and values of this riparian system is pretty high. I mean, obviously they indicated that in my report by the function and value analysis, and also by showing the extent of the system, and also mentioning that it does connect to sensitive tidal resources further down gradient. So there's no disagreement there. The one thing that I did want to say, and in a couple of things generally, and these are general statements, are not definitive in the fact that there's always exceptions to these kinds of things. But in my experience of being in the field now for 35 years, and probably 30 of those or close to that, doing vernal pool inventories. I guess back in 1990 is when a lot of us said, "Oh, there is such a thing as vernal pools. Let's study them." So before that, we were honestly slightly clueless. From my observation, in this kind of landscape setting, vernal pool habitats are far and few between within sort of large riparian areas, and the reason for that is simple. The wood frogs and spotted salamanders are two keystone, if you will, vernal pool obligated species, tend to avoid areas that could flood out and strand their egg masses on vegetation outside of a pool. So over the years, as this happens, while some areas could be used, and very often they're very low productivity because of that factor, that overall they're being avoided due to flooding issues. The other thing too, when you look at riparian areas, especially in the lower portion of a watershed, if you look at the upper portions of a stream habitat, what we call headwaters, those are much, much more sensitive. When it comes to the lower portions of the watersheds, and this is a generality, it's not specific, there's obviously exceptions, these systems are more robust. They're more resilient to wetland impacts, particularly in the water quality portion. So those are the two comments that I have. But the final thing is that even if these ended up being vernal pool habitats of some caliber, that with us doing what we did, there's not going to be a direct impact to these systems. The other thing that has to be said is that, and it doesn't always happen, and this is sort of a nice exception, is that very, very often when I deal with vernal pools, and Mr. Davidson knows that, actually I'm working on a project that was passed on to him that he couldn't do in Avon, so I'm dealing with that right now. But the idea is that when you take out forested habitat, that's the kind of habitat that wood frogs like to hibernate in, also spotted salamanders. So when development happens mostly in an open field, which is periodically hayed or mowed, those areas are not as much critical habitat for, at least for hibernation. I mean, obviously there's movements that can happen in these areas. So that's a plus for this area, that there's next to no impact on preferred terrestrial habitat for obligate vernal pool species. I guess that's all I would have to say at this point.
George, that's 2, 3, and 4, correct?
That is 2, 3, and 4 kind of blended together in some way.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, let me just go on. The next comment had to do with the fact that there was a restrictive layer at about 1.5 feet below the system right here, and it was within 60 feet of this detention basin, this above ground basin. And was there a concern with pollutants, specifically nitrogen, as it percolated out of this system vertically down and horizontally kind of to the east? If you hit that restrictive layer, was there a chance that it was going to possibly get into this stormwater system and get mixed with the water, and then obviously outlet and make its way down to the outlet down at the wetlands? And so there's a few things to talk about on this one. The original application, the configuration of this north lot was a little bit different, and this basin actually was located closer, like 60 feet closer over here. We've reconfigured this lot, not as a response to this comment, but basically to make it more efficient with the bus queuing. But the unintended consequence, which was a really good one, in that it pushed this basin out to about 120 feet away from this leaching field. Now, I had mentioned that this project has been reviewed and approved by the permitting authorities for the septic system. But basically, what the regulations say, that the technical standards, the Connecticut DPH technical standards, is that if you have an open system, it needs to be between 50 to 75 feet away from the leaching field. So you can see that we're almost more than double that distance that's required by the regulations. And those regulations, they take into account nitrogen loading. That the pollutants are kind of, the pollutant dissolution is kind of baked into those regulations. So we're more than twice as far away from the leaching field. So that's kind of my first comment and first response to this comment. The next one is that it's a fairly large system. You can see, everything comes to the building down here to a pump station, and it basically has 3 separate pumps, and it goes to 3 parts. One part is this one. The next part is from here to here, and the next part is from there to there. So essentially 1/3 of the flow comes up to part 1, which is up here and right there. Of that 1/3 of that, so 1/9 of the total flow actually comes to this part. This is part 1C right here. So you've got about 780 gallons per day of design flow getting to part 1C, which is the part in question. That's about the equivalent of 2 3-bedroom houses. So not a whole lot of flow. And furthermore, the design flow is typically 2 times what you might expect to see as actual flow. And that's because you want to have a factor of safety baked into that. So in reality, we're going to see about 400 gallons a day going into this part of the system, which is the equivalent of 1 3-bedroom house. So there's really not going to be a tremendous amount of flow going into this system. And this system, as I had previously mentioned, is more than twice the distance away from an open infiltration system as required by the regulation. So that's number 2. Number 3 is that although it's not required by the regulations, we're actually utilizing a technology called soil air injection. And there's going to be a air injection directly into this pipe that then makes its way down into here. And again, it's not required by the regulations. We meet the standards without it, but we're doing it to provide another level, another factor of safety. And the air, the oxygen, when it gets pumped into the system, it has an effect that it helps to dissolve those nutrients in the nitrogen much quicker than without pumping that air in. So again, there's really no concern with the nutrients coming out of here and going 120 feet and getting into this because of those several factors that I had just mentioned. So that's number 5. Number 6 has to do with the previous design. This basin was up further, and there was probably this amount of pavement was getting treated by going into the above ground basin. But the rest of it, including some of the pavement down here, was flowing right into catch basins and then going right into the outfall. And that was a good pickup by Mr. Davison. We had missed that. So by virtue of the change up here, there's just naturally more of this pavement that's getting into here. And there are, a small area of pavement that's not getting into there. And what we've done is we've put at these catch basins that are collecting flow from the bituminous pavement, which is really the flow that you want to capture and treat. We're putting in water quality inserts into these catch basins. They're specifically designed. You put them in the catch basins, kind of like you would during for sediment control. You put filter baskets in there, but these are meant to be long-term control and they're specifically designed to remove 80% of the total suspended solids. So there's 3 catch basins that you can see that were capturing water that was going to be untreated before it went to the wetlands. And we've put these water quality inserts into the catch basins. And again, I had mentioned earlier, but the town engineer has reviewed this and he's approved it for water quality. So that was number 6. Number 7 was it was really the same thing that we're talking about. Number 8, that was, again, it's talking about really the same thing that George's report, George and I missed this, that all of the flow was not getting treated into the basin. So again, that was a good catch by Davison. And again, we've provided these water quality inserts as a response to that. Number 9, and this has to do, we did not have some silt fence down here. So we've extended that silt fence, and we've got a silt fence and a hay bale, so a double row of protection that extends all the way up. We did not have that there before, so we missed that, and Mr. Davis picked up on that. So we've extended that to capture all the sheet flow during construction that's coming down there. That's number 9. And then 10, I'm going to turn George back to you for a response to that.
I think number 10, I also dealt with earlier by talking about the resiliency of larger riverine systems. And I think, the improvements that now have been made for the stormwater quality, I think will take care of that question. Again, there's no disagreement that this is an important system for the towns, probably one of the largest wetland systems. And so we understand that that's a key component, is make sure water quality is taken care of.
Right, so that's, we feel like we've responded thoroughly. We are, of course, looking for an approval tonight if that's possible. So I guess at this time, we're done with our presentation and the responses to Mr. Davison's comments. And of course, we'd love to hear any comments he may have, or the commission or the public at this point.
That's great. Thank you. I have a quick question about the catch basin filters, these long-term filters. Could you define long-term?
Yeah, I mean, typically, there's not a whole lot of area that's going to these. And so you've got to replace them probably every couple of years or so. And we've talked to Bill McMinn, who's the facility director for the Board of Ed, and he's on board with this.
So
Go ahead.
well, then I guess what I would ask or wonder is if this, in addition to adding them into the plan, if there's an update to any maintenance plan, recognizing that in order for them to be effective, they'll need to be fairly regularly maintained, if it's only every couple of years or so.
Yep, and I can certainly do that. We have a maintenance schedule for all the stormwater measures already, and I will add the maintenance schedule for those inserts onto this table, if that's acceptable.
Go ahead, Erin, and then.
Well, that was exactly my question, Kealoha, that in your stormwater report, you have maintenance and operations spelled out as well for after construction. And that was my request, that the maintenance of these new inserts be added into that as well. And have that prepared for the town, because the maintenance of this system is going to be important for town staff to be able to maintain. So not just in the application documents, but an actual, maintenance manual for operations, I guess, or at least take that section out.
Right. I think that's pretty critical, having all of that spelled out, because this doesn't really work unless it's maintained properly. I
I
had,
can certainly put that together.
I had, I guess, just a quick question. I noted last month that, you made a point of saying that you're, or maybe it was Mr. Logan, you, the applicant, that you were adhering to the 2004 water quality standards, despite the fact that 2023 standards are coming out. And given that this is a new school and we're well into the 21st century, I just wondered if there were, I haven't looked at it yet, if there are big changes that, would be applicable to having a brand new school built in 2023.
So we've sent people to seminars about those new standards. It's my understanding that there are some changes. Obviously, there's changes, possibly some significant changes. I know one of the changes is in the way you look at the way you do your perk tests and your infiltration. It's different than the way we do it today. You have to use something called a double ring infiltrometer. But I haven't gone through those standards, and I can't tell you if that's gonna result in significant changes to this design.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're still, the town's requirement is the 2004, so that's what we designed to.
Yep. Other agency members or Aaron?
Yeah, I guess my thought on that, and maybe Matt can comment on that if he's been following that. I thought the goal of some of the updates was to bring some of the standards to be more consistent with Deep's general permitting, I think, for stormwater. Does that ring a bell? I don't know if you particularly attended any of the sessions.
I haven't, and I can tell you that we're going to have to get a stormwater permit, a construction
Right.
general permit. So we're going to have to abide by that anyway.
Right. Okay, that was all I had on that. I'll leave it to agency members and then Matt, if he had any follow-up questions as well.
I just have a question about the water quality inserts, like specifically, what they do, how they're constructed. Are they just going after finer sediments, or is there some filtration for, say, metals or petroleum, like a carbon filter, or,
So here's the detail, Martin. Yeah, they are filtering sediment sizes to remove the 80%, and I don't believe that there's a carbon filter.
okay.
But you can see here that here's where they're designed for the TSS removal rate.
Okay. Does it say how big they are, what the capacity is in terms of square feet of sediment?
Well, it looks like they can hold between 1.5 and 4 cubic feet of sediment, depending on the size of the insert,
Okay.
which is 1.5 cubic feet. So that's a lot.
Yes. So do we have a specific size that we've selected for this project?
Well, these are Condot catch basins, so they're the 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet. So these are going to be the larger ones. I honestly don't know if it's the medium or the large or the extra large, but
I see. Okay. So the filter size is dependent on the area of the basin and its capacity. So that's okay. That's fairly reasonable. Any ideas on how often they should be maintained or cleaned out? Are they specified?
yeah, I mean, it's when I was talking to Caitlin, who's my PE, who put this together, she said it was every year or two, but it's basically, as you can see here, it's going to be based upon the design guidelines by the manufacturer. So I
Yeah.
can circle back and when I put that O&M plan together, I'll make sure that it's spelled out clearly.
That sounds good. And maybe even by inspection would be good. And did anybody ever talk about, what the plan is for, say, snow and ice removal out here, where there's maybe a snow shelf, or are we going to put it down salt, or are we putting down sand? I mean, road sand is usually the result of, ice control. And I'm just wondering if there's been any discussion around that.
I don't know what the what the facilities group uses for de-icing.
Okay, we had some facilities people on the call last time around. But that's really, it's not, road sand is a result of road sanding usually, especially in a setting like this. I can't imagine there'd be a lot used, but it's really, it's going to be a town maintained. How are the schools? Is it the individual maintenance personnel for each school facility, or is it a town?
I know Bill
Public
McMinn is
Works
the
duty?
director. Yeah, Bill McMinn is the director of facilities. I don't know if it's for the town or the Board of Ed, but he oversees all that. And so
Yeah.
he has a maintenance crew and a schedule to maintain at least all the Board of Ed facilities.
Okay. All right.
So I guess, given that, Martin, that's a great point. If there's ice on the sidewalks and, all these pervious surfaces where kids are going to be walking, are all those catch basins going to catch that runoff? Is it designed that way? I know it's designed for the roads, but what about sidewalks?
Yeah, I mean, all the sidewalks are pitched back towards
Okay,
the bituminous pavement, and it all goes to the stormwater management system. Is that what you're asking?
yeah, so I guess, and presumably you would have included, I guess that would be included in your calculations for stormwater then?
Yep.
Except of course it's ice, not nitrates. Anyway, go ahead, Martin, if you have more questions.
Yeah, no, I was just curious about those because I haven't really reviewed those in the past, and maintenance is an important issue, certainly for something like this. So, I don't know what we are looking at for a maintenance schedule. But certainly I would imagine at least initially seasonally might be considered to see how these things accumulate. So that's all I had on the engineering side of things. I have a couple of questions for George. I don't know if anybody else has any engineering related questions.
Nope.
Oh, go ahead.
So it's really kind of for George and for Matt, sort of together. I'd kind of like to hear from both of you. And I know as a soil scientist, I've been, you go out and you delineate the edge of wetlands, and how many hundreds of feet do you venture into this, large wetland area to evaluate whether or not there are potential vernal pools or not. And I've gotten dinged for flagging potential vernal pools, and I've gotten dinged for not flagging potential vernal pools. And it's not something that is a hard and fast rule to flag out, and certainly it's very dependent on what time of year you go out, as George had said. And so I think that George really raised probably the most salient issue around the possible presence of vernal pools in and along the Neck River. And I would say, based on my experience, it's not uncommon to have the hydrology sufficient to support vernal pools in and along floodplain areas. And maybe supposing that, and then looking at what we have for the adjacent upland resource, as George mentioned, it's a hayfield, and what's that going to look like post-construction within a couple of 100 feet of the wood line? And just, supposing there are some amphibian breeding habitats in and along there, what can we say about the hayfield, and what can we say about future development in terms of what kind of impact it might be on those resources? And I'd be interested to hear from both George and Matt on that subject.
I don't mind speaking to this if it's okay if I respond first, Martin. And I apologize, my camera's not on. I promise I'm not hiding. I have a new computer, and when I click to turn my camera on, it's telling me I need to set it up. So I haven't done that yet. But and the reason I was going to respond to this question is I did have a detailed conversation with Eric Davison about this, and Eric is a far better vernal pool expert than I am. And we talked about just that issue, Martin. First, I think to your point to how far into the wetland do I go? I was, my camera's not on, but I was laughing when you said that because I had the same thoughts myself at times. And I think we focused on this particular area because we had a stormwater outfall here. And I sort of would agree that in certain cases, you know, it may not even be necessary to trudge far into the depths of a wetland if there's nothing being proposed near there. So we sort of focused on this area because there was a stormwater outfall here. And obviously you guys have relocated that, which I think, you know, it sort of takes away a lot of the concerns we had there. But I did speak with Eric about these specific resource areas, how he felt about them and how he felt about the development in the hayfield. And Eric's comments on this was that and I would agree again with George's comments, his high level comments about the potential for these things to be vernal pools or what the quality of the vernal pools would be. Eric felt like if anything was breeding, there would probably be something with a shorter breeding duration like wood frog. There doesn't seem to be a long hydro period. He did not feel like they would turn out, if you did even study them, to probably be high quality vernal pools. We don't have that information, but that's what he surmised based on our observations. And Eric didn't have a lot of concern about development in this field. Because of that reason, he did not feel like it was very viable upland habitat. And so we talked specifically about the development and developing this field if it was a vernal pool. And Eric did not feel like it would be that big of an impact if it was a vernal pool, given the fact that it is a field.
Great, thank you.
I guess I would echo what Matt just said, based on my experience. And not that I discount the fact that there are riparian areas and floodplain areas that have vernal pool habitats. And, you know, I've seen several along major rivers, including the Connecticut River, say in Cromwell, when I was doing a town-wide inventory years back. And there are, I guess, seasonally flooded areas that are slightly on the higher side than the elevation of these potential vernal pools that are used. And some of them are what you call category ones, pretty productive, but mostly they're also associated with a larger proportion of upland habitat, forested upland habitat with, you know, with good duff and leaf litter, which is, at least for wood frogs, that's what they prefer. So yeah, I would agree with what Matt just said.
Thank you. Thank you. Sounds good.
Other questions?
I actually have one more, and that's I think it's probably for Will. Look, so this is going to be a geothermal. It says well field, but is it really a ground loop system? It has sort of an odd shape.
Basically, Martin, I don't know exactly how many wells there are, but they're located like 20 feet on center in a kind of a triangular pattern. So this just encompasses all the wells.
Okay. Oh, okay.
And
I got you.
they are a closed loop system that pump back to, I didn't design the system. There's a different
The heat pump,
consultant, but it's a closed loop system. It's not actually drawing groundwater. It's just using the existing groundwater to heat and cool.
Okay, good. The view you just had on the screen before this one showed the old layout, so I was more curious about that. So this is the wellfield extent at the moment.
Yeah, and we had to get a minimum number of wells in, which is why we got one right there and one right. You know what I mean? We had to kind of one right there, so that's why it looks kind of odd.
It's fine. Thank you. That's all I need to know.
I guess I have a quick question. And I must have missed this from the last meeting. What is the surface area going to be over the well area? Is that just going to be grass?
Yes, that's a play field. These wells,
right.
they can either stick out 2-3 feet or they can be buried. And we're going to bury them all so the kids can use that area for play.
Okay, that's right. I remember that now. Other questions?
I did have one quick question, kind of harkening back to vernal pools. While we were on the site visit, I don't remember when that was, a few months back, I think we had come across a turtle shell. So I'm just wondering if, there's any impact to turtle habitat, if there was a natural heritage review done, if we could speak to that. And then if there are, turtle habitats out there, is there any construction condition, if you will, for a turtle sweep or to protect that species or species that might be out there?
So the question that I have, and I don't exactly remember that, but we were spread out, as you remember, so we were having different conversations in different parts of the field. Do you recall, based on the carapace, what species it might have been?
I think it was a box turtle. The shell itself was pretty ripped apart. It looked like a predator had gotten to it. But I want to say it was box turtle.
Right. So what we do know, and I think Will is going exactly where I was going to ask him to go, as of today, which is, I think it will be June 2020, 2023, information, probably if DEEP they do it every 6 months, usually December and June. They repopulate any additional data that might exist. And my recollection was that we didn't have anything that overlapped our site.
I'm trying to, where's our site, George? Is it,
It's-
here's I-95.
I can't point to you. I would say it's a good question.
Where the heck is Mungertown?
There it is, right? And you see the main stem of, I think, it probably is where that you see the blue line. I know that there's something that has been documented as far as listed species at the park. So I think that's what you see there, that circle that's between exit 60 and 61. And so we should be to the left and up a little bit. No, because that's Green Hill, whatever the other road is.
Oh, here's Green Hill. Here's Green Hill.
Yeah, keep going.
Is this Munger? No.
No, Mungertown is further down.
Green
It's going to
Hill
be off
comes
exit
down.
60, Matt. So go above the E and exit 60 in that area.
Yeah.
All right, this says Norton Town Road.
You know what you could do if you can do it is go to the Connecticut Eco.
But I guess we're gonna have to as a part of the DEP general stormwater permit, we're gonna have to do a pre-screening application with DEEP. And if they find anything like turtles or anything, they're gonna give us recommendations that we have to put in the specifications, like sweeping and fencing and things like that. I don't know why I can't see Mungertown Road on here.
Yeah, my recollection was that we didn't have. If we had, I'll be talking about it. I'm sure Matt would be talking about it too. But that's my recollection, that there is a hit at the park to the east and or the town property. But that's it. And I don't know.
My recollection as well, that there was not a polygon there.
Right. Will, could you just very briefly explain to the commission, the agency, excuse me, that I'm not sure how much experience they have with the general permit of what that is in that level, that review
Sure.
and triggers that, just a very quick kind of, not to get too in depth, but just so they understand what that means.
Sure. So the DEP has a permit that developers and contractors must apply for and receive approval for the discharge of stormwater and dewatering wastewaters during construction. And it has to do with the amount of area that is disturbed. In a case like this, where it's a local approval, meaning it's not a state project, it's a local project that's going through the commissions, the disturbed area trigger is 5 acres. So we are disturbing more than 5 acres. I think we're probably up around 9 or 10, something like that. So basically, what you have to do is you have to make an application to DEP 60 days before you break ground, before you start construction, and you have to answer all the questions in the permit. You have to give them your stormwater management report, all your design plans, and they will review it to make sure that the erosion control design, which is obviously the treatment for stormwater during construction, as well as your stormwater design and your water quality measures, which is your treatment after construction, they're going to make sure that all that complies with the 2004 stormwater quality manual. And then they will, within those 60 days, they will either issue an approval, or they'll give you some comments that you have to respond. If your design does not meet those standards, you'll have to change your plans to make sure they do meet those standards. And then throughout the duration of construction, you have to get out there once a week to inspect the erosion control measures, make sure they're functioning as designed. Additionally, you have to get out there after the day after each rainfall that generates a discharge. So that is, and then you have to maintain your inspections on site. So in case the DEP wants to come visit your site, you have to have the contractor has, or in this case, the construction manager will have to have those on site. So it's an extra level of protection, of comfort for commissions and agencies such as yourself that this is going to have to comply with DEP regulations, specifically that permit for construction. And as a part of that, the pre-screen for that is you have to send them this plan right here. And if there's any known listed species, they will send you a letter that says, okay, here's what we found, box turtles or whatever else. And here's how you have to make sure that you're not gonna damage them. In a lot of cases, what I've seen, if it's like box turtles, what they'll do is they'll say, okay, during certain months, during their breeding months, you have to get out there. The contractor has to do a general sweep for 20 minutes of the site, or an hour, whatever it takes before you actually start operating machinery. And then you also have to set up silt fence, which you would anyway, at the edge of the wetlands, but you have to set that up so none of the critters can pass from the wetlands up into the areas that are going to be disturbed. And George, feel free to expound if I missed something.
No, that's basically it. And that protocol has changed and become a little more restrictive over the years. The timing has been included, time of year, which is more important. So what I did in the meantime, and I could share the screen if the commission wanted me to, I looked at Connecticut Eco, and I'm assuming this is updated information. You want me to share the screen?
Yeah,
Okay.
great. How do I stop sharing?
Yeah. I can tell you that picture is not from Madison.
How, I don't know what happened here. Why I can't.
Well, if that's okay. I mean, it's as long as
there we go.
there we go.
All right.
Okay. So now I can share. Here we go. So, okay. So there you have it. I think you can see this. This is our site right here. I don't know if you can see it. That's the field. This is the closest estimated habitat for at least one listed species. I don't know what this little thing is here. Maybe there's two of them. And we got 1,683 feet from the corner of our field to the closest area. I took a look at eBird, which is one of these resources that we have. And I think there is a listed bird that's part of, it was found in this area here. So I think that's our listed species. Now, I think Will is correct. I mean, any turtles that were found there, I mean, would I be completely surprised if there was some remnant box turtle population or an individual or two? No. This is a quite extensive system, obviously. So It's up to the commission. If they thought they wanted a sweep, just a preemptive sweep, I don't think we would have a problem with that. As far as turtles are concerned.
Well, I think if you found, I don't suppose anybody took a picture of the carapace. I wasn't on that sidewalk.
I
No.
don't think,
No,
That's
I didn't.
good practice. It's good practice, people.
Yep.
Barring no picture, undoubtedly there are turtles there, given
Sure.
the riparian habitat and the open meadow. There's surely turtles. So I think it would be best practices to do sweeps for turtles.
I would agree.
Other,
Remember, there's a pond just to the north. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we have box turtle and box turtles, painted turtles that are coming out of that system and possibly utilizing the field for breeding. Especially, I mean, that would make sense to me. I don't know about box turtles because I think this habitat has, the upland areas have been, manipulated, impacted, et cetera. And usually what we find is box turtles don't like hay fields because not that they don't use them, but they get basically killed by mowing equipment. If there's a prolific enough population of painted turtles in that pond nearby, which I fully expect that's the case, they will attempt to breed in the field. So at least we could protect those by doing a preemptive sweep.
all right. Great question, Anna. That was good. All right, other questions from agency members or others?
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not really familiar with the term sweep when it comes to turtles. And I imagine we're checking pre-construction,
Yeah.
we're taking a look at the habitat. I know there's another layer of protection in terms of, setting up silt fence and creating physical barriers and doing monitoring during construction. Is that?
That's basically it. So I've been doing a few of those this season. So I'm familiar with the protocol, and basically what happens is your silt fence goes in first, or your barrier, whatever that might be, before any clearing or any other activities happen. And then said specialist goes out and basically monitors what's on the upside of the silt fence, say. If any turtles are found, they are relocated to the other side of the barrier, whatever that barrier might be. That's typically what happens. And then there's an educational program that is part of that, where you get the construction supervisor and say, okay, come here, buddy, let's talk about turtles. And so you have a discussion, and they know to do certain before the machinery starts rolling, or they have to look around, because some of these animals are obviously attracted to the warmth of an excavator from the previous day and so on. So yeah, so that's at least two components of that.
Is there a seasonality to doing that, where you'd have better success?
Yeah, June would have been the best time, or late May to late June. That's breeding time for many of these species. But yeah, it could be any time from, say, April 1st to sometime in October.
But George, once we set that silt fence up, in Martin, there is silt fence run along the entirety of that northern property and the east and the west. So correct me if I'm wrong, George, but once we set that up and do the sweep and remove them, none of them are getting in after that, right?
Nope, you've basically excluded we call those exclusionary fences. So yeah, and that's what I've done a couple of these this year for large solar projects, and that's what we do. We basically enclose everything, sweep, remove, and relocate.
And Martin, remember that silt fence, it's actually buried several inches into the ground and folded up with, so nothing can, a turtle's not going to burrow into that. I mean, a hedgehog might, but a turtle's not going to.
Okay,
If we import the hedgehogs, we will, yeah.
so that would be the first thing we do when we get our permits is to get the silt fence in.
Yeah, they got to do that before they do any other kind of
Yeah.
land disturbance. You have to, as a part of the permit.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions? Aaron, do we have anybody from the public? I know nobody spoke last time. Is there anybody who would like to?
Yep, we can ask if anyone from the public would like to speak for or against the application. Just raise your hand and we'll let you be heard. I don't see anybody. Most of our attendees are other applicants.
I checked, I saw that, but I just wanted to check.
I
Okay,
guess, so the options for the commission this evening would be the ability to close the hearing, and begin deliberations. I think staff or the commission, I can speak for myself, and that I was looking for feedback from both agency members as well as our third-party consultant with respect to opinions of the applicant's response and suggestions for conditions. And then I had every intention of drafting that resolution for you to bring back based on tonight's deliberation for your next meeting for action. I know that's not necessarily what you timing wise would hope for, Will, and I am sympathetic to that. I think it's just challenging to blindly draft a resolution without hearing from anybody this evening.
Aaron,
But-
this is Lee. I have a
Yes, Lee.
question. I noticed that the applicant's response was like July 6th. Matt, did you have an opportunity to review that before tonight?
I did a cursory review and I was kind of using this meeting as my review as well. So I've been, listening carefully and, I have a few thoughts.
So are we expecting a formal response from Matt to the applicant's July 6th letter and their presentation tonight?
I guess that's really, Matt, I know you spoke about the vernal pool a bit, and we did receive after 4:30 this evening word from Johnny Nako, our town engineer, that Will's revisions have addressed his three concerns, two or three that he had written in his previous memo. But Matt, I guess that's a great question, and I'm sure the agency members are looking to you to be able, you and Eric, to be able to.
Yeah, it seems like we need it for the record, given the initial report, because there's some pretty harsh criticism. Maybe that's too strong. Maybe that's too harsh a term to use, harsh. But there's some pretty statements in Matt and Eric's original report that I think need to be cleaned up for the record if in fact they're satisfied with the applicant's response.
yes,
That's my feeling anyway.
I agree, Lee. I think that's a good point. We've had, we've heard from the applicant's response. It would be great to kind of close the loop there, which would also feed into whatever our discussion is to help Aaron draft a resolution for next month.
Or if you need additional information and needed to keep the hearing open. So I guess that's
Fair enough.
some guidance from you, Matt, as far as how you'd like to go as well.
I think that for the most part, any concerns I had were addressed. I think that there's a couple things I would comment on. I think all the vernal pool stuff is resolved. I agree with George's statements. I like the fact that the outfall was moved. I would make a statement, which I don't think requires any action other than sort of a construction monitoring, but I have been personally involved with construction monitoring during geo-well field drilling, and it can be a very, very messy process. I think that when you look at potential impacts, you're only looking at construction phase impacts. So I think it could be managed with a construction monitor, but I would be advised that if the drilling is done with any type of bentonite slurry, it can be a very, very messy process, and you are close to the wetland there. Again, I think it can be managed with standard erosion control products, but you definitely want to have some oversight there. And then the only other comment I would have would be sort of with the stormwater. I respect the fact that there's retrofits to the catch basins. I understand that it's very hard to sort of engineer back in some type of primary stormwater treatment when you've laid the site out already. Generally, as a rule, when I do my own projects, I try to stress to people that if you're doing a raw land development, you like to see primary stormwater treatment for all stormwater. Sometimes it doesn't happen. And I think the stormwater as a whole is done well. I would agree with the applicant's statements in the last meeting that, I also considered underground infiltration. It's a secondary treatment measure in the manual, but I agree that you can consider a primary treatment, especially with the isolator row. The UNH studies show those systems to be very effective. But with the catch basin inserts, those are still only a secondary treatment practice, and you are discharging very close to the wetland. So I don't know if there's something else you can do where you can do some type of emergent plantings at the outfall, or just some other type of added protection. The stormwater from those areas is in around a well-traveled area, so you are likely to get petroleum products in your stormwater runoff. You will potentially also have heated stormwater runoff. Again, it's difficult to engineer in at this phase some type of primary treatment for that area, but maybe there's something else that can be done near the outfall to sort of buffer those stormwater impacts, given the proximity to the wetland and the acknowledged high quality of that Neck River wetland system. And that's really the only thing that's for me, that's sort of still outstanding. I appreciate everyone's responses to our comments. I was glad to hear that the septic got approved. And, I think that's everything else has been pretty much resolved. So I guess the summary is, I don't know if it needs to stay open to retrofit some stormwater thing there, or if that's even necessary. But that's the only thing where I would still have any sort of lingering concern there.
Okay. Martin?
Yeah, I'm sorry, excuse me. So Matt, are you talking about the level spreader outfall? Is that what your concern is?
Yeah, it's essentially you have a secondary treatment practice that discharges in close proximity to a high quality wetland. So again, it's not a large area, but it is a well-traveled area. So if there's any, and I don't know if there's any ability to pull it back, if there's any ability to incorporate some emergent plantings at the outfall, just another level of protection for that stormwater that's exiting that level spreader into the wetland there.
Is it like an erosion issue? Do you think the velocities at that level spreader would create a problem down there? Or
no, and I think Will had attested to that they were considering the volume at that outfall would be low. I think the issue more is the water quality.
Yeah,
Okay.
and right. I agree with that.
And talking about right here?
Yes.
I thought you were talking about these three inserts.
Well, I think at this point, the inserts, I mean, I think the stormwater treatment system is designed, right? So you're not going to incorporate some additional primary treatment practice up there that treats the water before it hits the outfall. So I'm saying maybe there's something you can do at the outfall. You incorporate some emergent plantings at the outfall, or just something to buffer the wetland from that stormwater discharge there.
Yeah, you know what did you see the detail for this thing, Matt?
I have not looked at it. No.
I mean, basically what it is it's 25 or 35 feet long. The pipe comes in And on the back there, it's like a concrete trough almost.
Okay.
Running down the center is a perforated pipe, call it a, I don't know, 18 or 24 inch pipe is perforated. The whole trough is filled with stone. And then it bubbles up, and it's also perforated at the bottom, so it infiltrates. The water bubbles up through the stone, and then it goes over the concrete level spreader, which is, again, 25 or 35 feet long, and it's completely level so that you're going to end up getting sheet flow and not channelized flow. But then as it bubbles up and sheet flows across that 25 or 35 feet, there's 10 feet of riprap that it travels through. And my experience with the riprap and the smaller stone is that it's extremely effective at filtering sediment. In fact, there was early on in my career, I had a temporary sediment trap that I designed. During construction, you had this big muddy area going to a big muddy pond. And then the outlet for these temporary sediment traps is just crushed stone. And I remember the muddy pond filtering through the stone. On the downside, it looked like it was clean water coming out. So the only reason I bring that up is to say that you can see here's the wetland.
I wouldn't be concerned about turbidity there, Will, or sediment, just because it's coming from a paved area. So really, all you're going to have there is road sand. It would be more of, the pollutants associated with vehicle traffic. And so the water quality issues, I don't think are resolved by stone. And it may be something as simple as providing, some type of vegetated filter strip there where, maybe George could give you a planting detail for that area. I'm not sure what else you could do there. I don't know if you have any flexibility to tuck it up a little further, but it's a water quality thing. I'm not saying you're guaranteed to have an adverse impact there, but again, you have a secondary treatment practice that discharges stormwater very close to a high quality wetland. And typically you'd want a primary treatment practice. If you can't have that, you would typically want some type of water quality treatment.
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly put a filter strip right up to the wetlands. I think we got another 6-8 feet here. So George can advise me on what he wants to put there.
Yeah, I mean, even if you have I don't know, I'm looking at it myself, even if you can cheat, say 3 or 4 feet going upgrade, and then you'd probably have to do a little bit of grading below it. So you have the level spreader concrete, and then you're probably going to have some geotextile reinforced area with vegetation below it, say another 6 feet or something like that. That can certainly be done. The other thing that I noticed from the inserts is that the inserts that you have selected also take care of ETPHs, right? So hydrocarbons, which is one of the major pollutants, obviously. So we take care of sediment, we take care of hydrocarbons. So what's left is basically anything else is more soluble or fine that gets through those best management practice, the inserts. So
yeah, that's good info. And adding the filter strip too might take care of some of the temperature effects. So yeah, those things, it's sort of those things in combination might be helpful. I wouldn't expect a redesign, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm thinking this is sort of a fairly simple solution.
yeah.
So I think those are great suggestions, and that's a good catch, especially thinking about the thermal aspects of it. Aaron, given this discussion, does it make sense then to just continue this till next month and come back? Or what are your thoughts?
Well, you could, if you'd like the applicant to show you a revision of the landscaping. It could be conditioned. I think either way, we're going to next month. So if you wanted to leave it open to receive that and have deliberations and action, I mean, you could probably handle all of them in one sitting. It's really up to the commission if you want to see what that looks like. Or
Okay, well, we have several things, right, that we had asked about already tonight, I think, in addition to this. potential vegetated strip. There's, you know, the maintenance, some of the maintenance plan. And as Eric had mentioned, or Matt, sorry, had mentioned, maybe more detail on construction monitoring, especially for the geothermal well digging. I'm trying to think what else. There were a few things that we talked about with respect to wanting to see additions to the plan. So I'm sorry. Did you have your hand up? Mr. I don't know how to pronounce.
Yeah,
your name.
I'm George Nowotny. Nice to see all you folks. I'm the representative from the building committee for just tonight. So I know Graham is usually on deck, but he's not available. So you're stuck with me. But I was just going to ask, I think what Aaron had brought up as a possibility, just if there was any way to approve it with contingencies that, you know, Davison Environmental is satisfied in their comments before anything is formally approved. We obviously would like to move this forward. We have a meeting with planning and zoning next later this month that we'd love to work through that. But obviously wetlands and you folks have the final say in that matter. I just wanted to make an appeal to do what we can to move it forward. But thank you.
Thanks. All right, so for the commission members, yes, Lee.
Do we need to keep the public hearing open though? I mean, we've had two meetings with public hearings and no comments from the public. So I'm wondering whether or not we can close the hearing. And so we just do it. And I'm thinking that if we get a letter from Matt and Eric with their suggestions, I don't think we need another formal response from the applicant. You know, I think it's time to stop the back and forth. But if we get a letter from Matt and Eric, basically saying what Matt just said and any other things he wants to comment on, basically saying the applicant's responses, if they do these things, satisfies them, then we can vote on it next month, is what I would suggest.
So there are, and whatever, you know, the information that Matt has put into the record is here and can be reconfirmed in writing as well. But as far as just discussion on the record, both the applicant and the agency members are aware of the recommendations. The real question is whether or not the agency wants to review additional information at you can't receive new information when you close the hearing, whether or not there are members from the public here or not. The applicant cannot submit any revisions to you if you close the hearing.
Okay.
You may be comfortable in saying, well, we'd like to close the hearing and move to deliberations, and these could be potential conditions that the applicant shall submit an updated stormwater maintenance plan for, prior to any site disturbance, things of that nature. But if you actually would like to review, some emergent plantings or a planting plan that the applicant comes up with, then you would have to request an extension from the applicant to hold the hearing open, because statutorily you cannot hold the hearing open to another meeting unless they granted an extension, which I'm sure you'd be agreeable to as we're trying to get in the right direction. But it really is your discretion if you do require new information. If you feel you have enough information and suggestions to deliberate and begin coming up with suggestions for conditions, that's fine as well.
Okay. So I guess so that is up to us, commission. I think we've heard, we've had 2 nights of this, or 2 meetings, 2 nights of hearing from the applicant, and then we got to hear from our consultant, our third-party consultant, and we've heard some of the back and forth about some of the different issues that were raised. I think probably have good notes, and of course the recording of this to refer to as we move to deliberations. So I guess the question for us really is, as Aaron said, do we want to see the revisions that we're probably going to be asking for, or do you want to have them be conditions for the application?
I'm comfortable with them being conditions. If Erin has an opportunity to review the notes and review her notes and review the minutes to make sure that we catch everything, because I know my notes aren't very, very, very good to get all the different conditions in. So.
Okay, anybody else have comments, thoughts?
I agree with that. I was just curious again. There was a shared screen that showed the level spreader, and then I think the property boundary. We're talking about a matter of 6 or 8 feet that we have to work with to do any additional water quality renovation plantings. Is that
It was 6 or 8 feet to the wetlands, Martin, not the property line.
Yeah,
to the wetlands?
it's to the wetlands.
To the wetlands. Okay. Okay.
So that's where any vegetated strip, it's just trying to get something in between that spreader and the wetland boundary. That was the line.
Right. Okay.
That's the new property line, Will?
Excuse
Just
me?
to double check. That's not the revised rear property line?
Let's see.
I just had a moment of doubt. I just wanted to ask you to look at it again.
I thought it
Oh,
was
this
green.
is the new property line. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you see my? You can't see my.
No,
screen.
not yet.
I'm sorry. Okay. This is the property line.
Yeah.
This is the wetland line.
Ah, okay.
So what we
That's
do is we basically move this back a couple feet. I don't want to put it right back against this walk because it's concrete. So I'd like to keep it off this walk. I don't want kids, walking by it and tripping over it or something like that. But we've got, again, I'm guessing this is 4 or 5 feet here and 6 or 8 feet here. So I suggest, we put a vegetated filter strip. I don't want to go into the wetlands, but, like this. Right along it. Something like that.
okay.
Okay. Well, I sense that from the commission, from those who have spoken and those who have not, that we are comfortable closing the public hearing, moving to deliberation, and working towards a draft motion. Although disagree if you would like, anybody. Okay, if there's no disagreement, I will take a motion. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I can make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay. I'll second. All right. Any discussion? There's no discussion. All in favor of closing this public hearing? Raise your hand. Okay, looks about unanimous. All right, this public hearing is closed. So this brings us to, this is our chance to deliberate. Although I feel we've had a lot of discussion. I think what, it sounds like we want to see are some of the changes we've talked about, some of the additions, some more clarification on maintenance of those inserts, the vegetated strip, a construction monitor. I know I'm missing something. but we
The
did
sweep.
The sweeping for,
sweeping.
okay, I have those four.
Would we need or would we want the wetland assessment to be updated, either including the response as an addendum or expanding that assessment part specifically about the vernal pool and wetland habitat impacts? I don't know if that would require a revision or if we can just include that response as an addendum to the report.
You mean the report from Davison Environmental that there's potential vernal ponds?
Yes, and then the response from the applicant.
Okay,
Well, those are in the record,
yeah, those are all there. Um,
and the formal responses are in the record as well,
Right.
Okay,
from both Davison and Rima.
right. I feel like there was something else, but I think most of the discussion seemed to center on making sure the stormwater is being treated properly.
Proper
And-
construction oversight
And construction oversight as well.
and
was it
long-term.
the maintenance plan as well? Yeah,
What's that?
was it the maintenance plan?
Yes,
Right,
I had.
yes. Making sure that's updated, including those inserts that will need to be changed regularly.
Okay.
All right, so anything else from this?
I would just request that, I think we need to just table deliberations to the August 7th meeting. August 7th, right? 8/7.
7th,
It is.
So we're going to use Matt's discussion tonight that's in the record as the minutes rather than him writing Matt rather than Davidson writing another letter, I guess. Is that what I understand?
Yes, and then what, as I draft a resolution, I can, share that with our consultant to review and.
That's
for-
fine. That's good. That
that'd be
works.
great.
Yeah,
present.
that works. That works.
We have our standard inland wetland, or agency conditions that we've been using for a while now, as far as notification of staff 48 hours prior to any site disturbance, things like that. So I'll assemble those and these specific concerns, and we'll add that to the agenda to wrap up at our next meeting.
Aaron, I have a question.
Yes, Will.
Since the public hearing is closed, so you're gonna have a set of conditions, changing the plans like we're talking about. Do you need me to do those prior to the next hearing, or those are gonna be conditions that after it gets approved, you just have to be satisfied at some point in August? Is that, you know what I'm saying?
Typically, how we would do that is that they would be reflected in a revision to staff prior to any site disturbance. So it would be specifically spelled out as we've described the area during this meeting, and to incorporate emergent plantings at the suggestion of the wetland scientist within this specific area, and to be shown on an updated plan set prior to any site disturbance. So we
Okay.
can incorporate this language and spell it out, but you wouldn't, because the hearing is closed, that
Yeah.
now we don't need to continue the hearing and request that information.
Okay,
now.
so I won't plan on I don't need to get any revised plans back
You're
to you
okay.
next week after that. Okay, great, thank you.
100%. Thank you both.
Thank you, Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Very much.
very helpful.
And thank you, George.
Thanks.
Well, thank you, Matt.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
So did we did table or not yet?
Yes, no, we're gonna table. So I make a motion that we table our deliberation for application 23-11 Munkertown Road to the August 7th Inland Wetlands Agency meeting.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? Okay,
Aye.
it's unanimous. Great. Okay,
Thank
so
you. to Matt. He
we
popped
will
off
move-
already. Missed him.
we will move on to our regular meeting. Our first application is 23-20, 730 Durham Road. This is the restoration of an existing pond.
Yes.
My understanding, go ahead, Erin.
I did receive an updated wetland report from Bob Russo today that Chuck Mandel, excuse me, from Tom Stevens and Associates sent over this afternoon. Given the time frame, I did recommend to the applicant that he grant the agency an extension to be able to review that and discuss at our August meeting. And so we did receive that extension and request to table to the August 7th meeting.
Okay. All right, so we're moving on.
We would just need to table that.
Okay. All right. I will make a motion that we table application 23-20, 730 Durham Road to the August 7th meeting.
I'll second that.
All right. Anna seconded. All in favor? Say aye, raise your
Aye.
hand. Another unanimous vote. So we will see that one in August. Okay. Our next application is 23-39 Longshore Lane. I will just preface this by saying I know the applicant, Lily Fogel, but I think I can be objective about this. This was received last month. And from the meeting, it looks like there was a decision to delay defining this as a significant activity until after the site walk. Yes. And so here we are at the next meeting. As I imagined, and just to remind the commission on, a significant activity, right? There's, just pulling this up. It's section 2 of our inland wetland regulations, section 2, part II, and it goes through, let's see, 7 different types of activities that can be significant or defined as significant. One of which, of course, is any deposition or removal of material in or from a regulated area, in addition to in or from an inland wetland. So go ahead.
Madam Chair, on behalf of the applicant is John Paul Garcia, and who initially submitted the application, and Lily Fogel, excuse me, as well. As you initially submitted the application, assuming this would be a significant activity, I think to the point where you paid the fees as well. And that was really the question for the agency, since it's a smaller walkway. However, it is a permanent loss of inland wetlands. And the agency members were most of them were able to visit the site, although did not have direct access from this property, and did need to go on the adjacent property at the permission of that property owner. And so since that meeting, some photos had been submitted by John Paul, just to give you some history of the area. And we have received comments from DEEP, because as you can see on the site plan, we have both inland wetlands and tidal wetlands in the area. And so this application triggers both an inland wetland agency approval as well as a planning and zoning commission approval for a coastal site plan. And the information from DEEP was a suggestion to reduce the width of the access way to ensure that no site work basically would encroach on tidal wetlands, because that would then fall under the jurisdiction of DEEP. And that was really the bulk of that letter, which I will upload into this file as well. I apologize that it's not there, but I can screen share it for you if you'd like to read through that this evening, if that would help make your decision. But really, that's where you are now, is to determine if you feel this is a significant activity that requires, one, the public hearing is a requirement, and two, additional information to consider the impacts of this proposal. And John Paul, did you want to kind of briefly talk about the application, or?
It's the idea is we're restoring an area that had been previously disturbed and allowing access for Lily to get to the back of the property. As the people walked it, saw the access is very limited. Deep didn't seem to have an overriding concern or issue. And one of the things they suggested was reducing it. And one of the things I would recommend is that as a condition of approval, we stake the tidal wetlands and the inland wetlands line, put our erosion controls on the upland side of that. And that way we ensure that we don't encroach on the wetland or the tidal or the inland wetland. And that way it provides a positive barrier. And we can do that either with hay bales or silt fence. But bless you. With one more?
That was it.
Okay, no more. But it didn't appear that the deep had an overriding concern about what we were proposing. They just asked that we, stay out of the tidal wetland, which is easy enough to do. Like I said, we'll just stake it before construction.
Because you're in the inland wetlands, not the tidal wetlands.
I understand that, but they overlap so closely.
Right.
Where we're working. They diverge again as we go farther away, and as we come in, they converge, and as we go away, they diverge. And so the throat is where the area was disturbed. The area where we're most concerned about is the area that was disturbed by somebody else, as everybody saw.
John Paul, can you remind me what the surface of that walkway is going to be?
Wood chips. It's a method of constructing trails in areas where especially we have high water table. I've used it on my own tree farm. I've used it on a bunch of water company properties. And what it is a base of relatively large stone to provide free access to water. You choke that with a finer material and you put a wearing surface of wood chips on it. And so long as you maintain it, and by maintain it, I mean, you add wood chips every 4 or 5 years, the trail will last indefinitely. And it, like on our tree farm, it holds up to about 600 or 800 people a year. And I've only had to upgrade it a couple of times. It's a good wearing surface. We're not talking that kind of traffic here. We're talking, Lily wants to be able to get a mower in the back to mow the grass. There's some trees that have to come down. So she wants to be able to maintain an upland area that she can't otherwise get to because the adjacent property owner kind of screwed up the access.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
And that was the area behind that barn, that little 15 by 20 shed. That was the area that had been disturbed. When we walked it, you could see it.
Yep.
Okay, so other questions, thoughts from the agency members on this?
I do. Jean Paul, it definitely looked like there was a pretty steep slope, at least in one area that led from the upland down into the wetland. And it looked like, when you talk about putting in these big stones as a substrate, you're talking about a fair amount of material that has to come in and be placed on that slope to make a level wood chip trail in through that area. I'm just wondering if there are any volume calculations for how much material needs to be brought in and how you're going to bring it in.
It's approximately 40 yards, and they probably bring it in by gator. Using a small, if you're not familiar with the term, it's a small all-terrain vehicle that carries about a half a yard of material at a clip. And the idea is not to fill it level with the surrounding ground, but to make it gradual enough so you can get down and back up again. A lawnmower can traverse a pretty steep slope. I'm not talking about making this a ski jump, but at the same time, I'm not talking about making it dead flat. We're just trying to put in enough material so that we have a wearing surface that will allow us to access the property in all kinds of conditions, and B, not have to require, building the exit ramp for 95.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. But it's about 40 yards total for the entire trail. And that's stone, fill material, and wood chips.
And what is the area of, or the square footage of inland wetlands that will be filled?
I thought it was 320 feet. I'd have to go back and look at the application. But I thought it was, hold the phone.
I'm looking at a
234
PDF
square
right
feet.
now that says 232.
Yeah, 234 square feet of wetlands. That's on that's item 4, page 1 of the application.
Yep, page 1.
Other questions?
Any feedback as to whether or not agency members feel this should be deemed a significant activity or not? I think that's our first decision that needs to be made.
I apologize. I didn't quite hear the definition of what would require a significant activity, but I think just as a precedence, any fill of a wetland might be considered significant because you're discharging material into the wetland itself.
I agree.
Yeah, I think I didn't read them all. There's 7 definitions for significant activity, and the first couple kind of deal with, or at least the first one with putting material into a wetland. So yes. So given that it is a significant activity, our next step is does that automatically trigger a public hearing?
Yes.
Okay. So that automatic.
Yes, so you would need to schedule, it would be a scheduled public hearing for within 65 days of receipt, which could be next month. And then it would be, I would recommend going through here, and I can pull it up here, 19 of your section, so that you can kind of go through what, if there's additional information.
So that's section 9, right? I think I looked at that.
Thank you.
Yeah, so. Is that right? Or no, section 7. Where is it? Because we did this for the Race Hill.
Right.
Exactly.
It's the same for the Race Hill. So when they were putting that bridge over the stream and disturbing the wetland, we went through those. So that's section 7.6A through.
I can share that if you want to just kind of look through them, and then you can, one, I think you need to motion that if this is determined to be a significant activity in your opinion, and that information
Can I make that motion?
Yep, and then you can go through
I'll second. All right, so
7.6.
all in favor, we're just going to quickly do this, I know, because it's getting late. All in favor of agreeing that this is a significant activity? Raise your hand, say yes. Martin disappeared.
Yes, I still have, I'm still with you.
Okay, so we have
Okay,
a significant
let's go to
activity. Did you pull it up? I can pull it up, Erin, because I have it.
right here.
Okay. Okay.
So significant activity again is defined in section 2.1 II. And Kayla, you did mention a few of those that
Right.
align with this application. So A is submitted site plans for the activity. Engineering reports or analyses. I mean, you don't have hydraulic information, however, you have the extent of filling an excavation. Description of ecological communities and functions of the wetlands or watercourses. John Paul, have you submitted inland wetland functions and values reports currently?
This was subject to an extensive review by this commission over a number of years. And I asked that that record be incorporated into this application, so we wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. You had extensive biological evaluations of all the wetlands and watercourses, location of any vernal pools, or all that stuff. That was done when this was proposed as a 7-lot subdivision. And so nothing's
Have a
changed.
record of that, that you'd like to submit with this?
I can, if I have to, I'll go through the file and pull it out, yes. But it should be part of your file already, which is why I asked that that file be included as part of this application. Because then it would automatically contain that biological evaluation.
I'm not sure I have digital copies of all of that information.
Then I would have to get copies of it from you and then scan them and give them back to you. We could do that. No, that's not a big deal.
Okay.
Well, yeah,
So I guess at this point, the agency can determine which of our letters you're looking for and
Yes, I can talk to you tomorrow, Aaron, about this.
how that
And we can get the information together.
pulled by John Paul and submitted is.
I think, so, you know, that was an extensive evaluation of the property. And I know, Lee, I think you were,
Yeah, I was there.
yeah,
And I had a red rope folder with all the stuff in it for years,
Yeah.
but I don't have it anymore.
yeah. I think I have some still. So I think a lot of that actually, you know, just looking through this, certainly C will be included in that information. D will be included in that information from the previous application.
Do we know the date of that application? I don't think I was around for that.
2012, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's been a while. So,
Yeah.
you know, description of how it will change, diminish, or enhance, I guess that would be something perhaps, John Paul, you could look at, you know, this, in this case, it's pretty targeted, the activity being proposed.
Yeah, E, F, and G, I think, because the path wasn't on the original application, obviously. So,
Right, right. No, the original application was huge and detailed. Yeah, so I think E, F, and G, although, yeah, are the only ones that might not be easily extracted from the previous application.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine. I can, like I said, I can go over this with Aaron tomorrow, so I don't take up any more of the commission's time. And we can put this together. This isn't that difficult.
Yeah, no, it's and I know I still have PDFs of a lot of that, I think. Okay, so we have determined it's a significant activity, and so we can schedule a public hearing if everyone is amenable for our August 7th meeting, since we don't currently have one scheduled.
I move we schedule a public hearing for, what is it, 23-39 Longshore Lane for next month.
I second, it's Martin.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Unanimous again. Okay, is there anything else we need to do, Aaron?
Oh, that would be it.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
John Paul and
Your
Lily.
patience. with
One
our-
question, Aaron,
Yes,
notice requirements. Are we required to
so I
notify joiners?
Yes, I have a standard letter. I will get that filled out for you tomorrow with the additional information you need and what the notification requirements are. And so then we can move forward.
Okay, then I will touch base with you either tomorrow or Wednesday. How's
Excellent.
that?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
both. This is helpful.
Thank you, everyone. Have a pleasant evening.
See you next
Bye.
month. Okay, so now our next regular meeting item is application 23-40, 8 West Wharf Road. This again is one that you received last month. And I gather did not do a site walk. For some people were not interested in going golfing, looking at the golf course. Do
No, we
some
did a
people
site,
go?
no, we
Some
did,
people-
we did a
Oh,
site.
Martin didn't, or Martin said he didn't want to.
Mm-mm. I was there.
Okay, so tonight we can discuss. Erin has sent around a draft resolution that hopefully you had a chance to look at and we can look at. And
I can share that again as
Yeah.
well.
so, go ahead, Erin.
And in your application documents, again, there is a letter from Eric Davison, who had worked on behalf of Country Club previously for pond dredging applications a few years back, and was asked to provide a report and general findings with respect to this application as well. So Eric's letter is in here as well, and details some methods, recapping the methods that are going to be used, and has come forward with the finding that he did not anticipate any adverse impacts to that stream, wetland and stream crossing that is just south of pond, irrigation pond number 7.
Okay.
You need, would you like me to, well, let's see, I don't believe Mike is here. If he is here, if you wanted to raise your hand. I only see Bob Russo is waiting patiently, and the letter C from an individual. So I don't believe that is Mike. Although I did invite him to come. I can highlight just on the plans here for you this particular area of crossing so that you're aware. Most all of you saw this, so it's kind of easy to see from West Wharf Road. So West Wharf Road will be over here on your right-hand side. And we kind of look to the northeast, I guess, as we're looking, is where the parking lot area was. And so this unnamed stream comes down into the property. There's a path crossing over that currently, which enters into irrigation pond number 7. And then there is a dam control structure here that ends up emptying into this emergent wetland system that eventually ends in tidal wetlands, crosses under Surf Club Road and out to Long Island Sound. And so the idea, the crossing is here, and the idea is to, it's a 10-inch pipe, irrigation pipe. So it's one of their mains. There's an existing pipe crossing currently in this location, and they would lower the water level of Pond 7 and do this during a low flow season. Typically the end of the summer is what they're proposing. They would be accessing the area with some type of matting for temporary access, as to not just to disturb any plant roots or things of that nature. The actual crossing would be excavating the soils by layer, topsoil, and then subsoil areas, separating those again onto plywood, replacing the pipe, and again relayering the existing soils in proper order back on. They anticipate the crossing would take about 2 hours to install this section of pipe here. And that is the extent of the actual construction.
So is that by hand? Are they digging this by hand, or is there a machine? How do they?
There'll be a machine. My understanding is that they'll probably just use a 1-scoop bucket
Okay.
to get the layers and separate that. They, with the matting, they are anticipating machines to come through. Some of the other, the other irrigation lines, there are other areas in the upland, not to take away from that aspect of the project. This is the only actual crossing, but the entire irrigation system is being replaced on the property. And it's a system that really they remove the sodding, excavate and relay where they can immediately play on top of that grass. So it is very little sedimentation and disturbance. And depending on, it's the same process depending on the size of the lines. Some of them, these smaller lines, actually can be snaked right through. So I did, I'm not sure if this is the overall, this is the particular, but you can see each color is a different setup. So there are various pipe replacements of various sizes throughout both areas, both on this West Wharf side and again over on the Island Ave side for the entire golf course. I did meet with the applicant and their design professionals going over the entire plan and made some suggestions to pull things further from tidal wetlands and inland wetlands. So where there was an opportunity access-wise, where we could shift a line over to another area to be further from a wetland, they were more than willing to go forward with that change. This particular crossing, there really was no way to avoid that as it was already existing. But that is the only other direct impact to the wetlands. I'll look real quick on here rather than scrolling.
Okay.
Making you all dizzy. But there are some photos in the application that show what the stream crossing actually looks like. I'm happy to share those with you as well if you'd like to see, or if you saw enough.
So for the agency members, questions, comments, do you need to see the other photos?
Nope.
Okay. Any discussion or comments? No. Okay. Well, Erin, do you want to pull up do you mind pulling up your
Yes, I do have that as
draft
well.
resolution?
Absolutely. Sorry, we only have one screen here, so I keep shifting things. Okay. Big enough. So this is basically what I have told you. 10-inch irrigation line. The total amount of excavation will be 13.3 cubic yards of material, and that will be replaced in kind. There's no additional sediment that is, or filled material that is proposed. The area, there are hay bales that are proposed. Again, this is supposed to occur under the low flow time of the year, roughly August. The hay bales will be put in the stream in case there is any water flow. And then those actually would be used for seed cover and to prevent erosion after the area is restabilized and seeded with a wet mix in the area. And again, Eric Davison of Davison Environmental did supply a report for this project on June 5th. and did confirm no adverse impacts to the wetland is anticipated if the several methods of construction that he detailed and recapped in his memo were followed. And so this is the draft resolution.
Okay, that's great. So I believe we're probably ready to make a motion.
If I could really quick,
It's not it.
Um,
This is not, I've emailed myself the wrong one. There's a fifth condition that I sent you.
Go ahead, Anna.
I think I was reading, or we had just talked about some vegetation will be, taken out and then replanted back in. Just looking at the pictures, I believe these are cattail, but if the wetland scientist could just confirm that they are cattail, if there's any Phragmites that are taken out or any invasive species, that those not be replanted.
That is a great comment. Yes, I think we do not want them to replace Phragmites. I think in that part it's cattails, but
It is, and
it'd be good. I mean, so it'd be worthwhile to say, I mean, if they are taking stuff out and it happens to be invasive, they can leave that out and maybe replant with something that is not.
Mhm.
Yes. I could have sworn I had a different.
I just
thought I
checked. This is what
comment.
you emailed us as well.
No, but I thought I drafted a different.
Do you remember what the fifth condition was?
That it was so that it was following the steps as noted in the wetland scientist's report, which I didn't write in here. I don't know where I saved it. Disaster.
I didn't see it in the drive.
So I had, yes, so I did have a revision. Essentially, let's see here. I can just restructure this. Restoration and stabilization, number 3, I would modify, and I apologize for this. Number 3, I wanted to modify and state that the applicant shall complete the work in accordance with the methodology as described in the wetland scientist Eric Davison Environmental's report to ensure minimal impact to the inland wetlands and watercourse.
Okay,
And then the 4th one was that the applicant shall notify the inland wetland agency upon completion of the project and to allow inspection to ensure conformance with
okay.
application requirements. It was just a rewording of those 3 and 3 and 4. And I apologize that did not.
I think the rewording is important though, because Eric Davidson, was it Eric Davidson, whoever the soil scientist was, his letter was pretty detailed about what needed, how it should be done.
Right. No, I agree.
I'm really sorry about that. So as long as that's in the record, I'll reflect that in the letter of approval, if you're agreeable to amend that wording.
Yes, so I think we can make a motion to approve this application 23-48 West Wharf Road in accordance with the draft resolution as verbally amended by Aaron for completion of this irrigation system. So that was a
So-
motion.
Thanks. I'm sorry. I don't know.
So Lee, did you second?
Somewhere.
Someone
Yeah,
did.
I'll second it, but I would refer, I think the motion should refer specifically to Eric Davidson's letter
Yeah.
dated,
Yes, and that's why, yeah,
dated June 5th,
I said,
2026.
yeah, as amended, as verbally amended by Erin, because she mentioned that in her
That works, that works. that works,
rest, in when she verbally went through amending 3 and 4.
That works.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Any other comments?
Just to include the native versus invasive replanting.
Yeah, I think that'd be great, Erin, if we could just be explicit, and maybe this is included in the Davison environmental letter, just that anything invasive that's taken out should remain out, and focus on having native plantings.
I'll add that as a fifth.
Okay, that'd be great.
Thank you.
All right, all in favor of this motion as amended and discussed? Raise your hands.
Aye.
I,
Okay. Everyone says yes. That's great. Okay, so now we have, we already did Fort Path, so we move on to application 23-37, 256 Bartlett Drive. This was tabled from last month. It's a regulated activity permit to remove trees within and adjacent to inland wetland.
So
Right.
this application came in just before our last meeting, however, was not on the agenda because it had already been posted. My goal was to add it to our walk meeting of last month, but the property owner was away, and we were unable to coordinate that. So Maria has been in conversation with the property owners. The plans that were submitted are not as detailed as would find helpful at this point to really get a sense of what trees and where the wetland boundary is. And so it would be my recommendation to schedule a site walk, which actually is scheduled for our next, this Saturday. If that's our regularly scheduled meeting. We happen to be, our regular meeting is bumped back a week because of the holidays this month. So 2 of these are falling in the same week. And so we can decide if that's going to be our meeting date if you're available. I am not, but Maria is available to walk the sites with you. And the applicant, because this was already tabled once, can grant an extension so that we can hold this in August, and is willing to, now is back from vacation and able to have the agency out to the house to take a look at the area.
Okay, and presumably update their application.
Yes, so and I will just kind of broadly note this for this application that we have not discussed yet, and the 3 that are on for receipts. Staff will be drafting some preliminary comments ahead of your next meeting in anticipation of what information will be needed to help make a decision.
Okay.
So I would recommend a site walk on this property as well as the 3 receipts that we have following this application.
Okay. Well, that sounds good. Do we need to formally table this then to next month?
Yes, please.
Okay. I make a motion.
I move we table application 2337 256 Bartlett Drive until next month, and included in our next scheduled site walks.
Excellent.
I'll second that.
Okay, great. We've got a motion from Lee, a second from Anna. All in favor, say aye, raise your hand. Great, everyone agrees. So we will see that August 7th and schedule a site walk. which brings us, of course, to our receipts. And Aaron, you're suggesting for all three of our receipts. So we have, okay.
So
So-
there's, yeah, well, and I guess to give them each their own opportunity for the agency, as you normally do, is to consider whether or not you deem this to be a significant activity or not, and then whether or not you would like to walk the sites. The first one of 251 Boston Post Road is the old Winter Club, Madison Winter Club, which is looking for both some minor building modifications and site modifications to convert the club into a new restaurant, which will include some outdoor seating areas, a new septic system, alterations to their parking lots and driveway configurations. All activity is within the 100-foot upland review area, both of the Neck River, and there's a wetland system just south of the parking lot, between the parking lot and Boston Post Roads on the west side. So I guess I can, it's a Tom Stevens and Associates site plan. I don't know if anybody had an opportunity to look at it. I can bring that up.
Yeah, well, obviously, yes. So I think clearly a site walk. I guess the question for the commission agency is this a significant activity? It looks like they're reusing the building, but they're still adding. There's going to be.
Yeah, I can show you.
Yeah, are they? I mean, is there significant?
So one of my questions is that I don't have an existing conditions map. So, I mean, just being familiar with the site, there's an existing, the Post Road is here to the south, Stonewall Lane is to the west, the Neck River borders the property to the east. And then there's residential units to the north. There's another small wetland system here. There is a wetland report submitted by Michelle Ford, wetland scientist, who did the field delineation and analysis. Part of the project includes the removal of driveway access here, widening of the existing driveway, the main driveway access into the parking lot. There is existing parking lot in this area, an existing outlet onto Stonewall Lane. It's my understanding that the applicants have some agreement with the neighbors that won't be a main exit for the business. That's not really a wetlands relevant issue, but that's, I think most traffic is going to be here through this area, the main access. The septic system will be under the existing parking area. And again, I from my initial review of this, there's a shed that's going to be relocated from this area. There's some outdoor dining. It indicates some pavers here. However, I don't have some levels of detail to the plan really to answer that question. Okay. So there's a landscape plan suggested. All, as I said, all activities are within the upland review area. I think really the question would be either, public interest or any other, potential impacts on the river.
Okay. Right. So
I didn't really, I guess my first thought was not a significant activity, but that's not really my decision. That's the agency's decision. And so in reviewing all of these, under section 2.1, that really is your call. So.
Okay. So, given what we know, how does anybody have an opinion or thought on if this is a significant activity? We'll do a site walk, but outside of that, that triggers a public hearing and additional information.
I don't see it as a significant activity at this point. You know, I don't know, do we have to decide at this meeting, or is it something that we can just, if we're going to do a site walk anyway? If there's a need for a public hearing, can we determine that at the next meeting, not to kick the can down the road?
Theoretically, because that's what we did for the Longshore
Yeah.
Road.
Technically, you can. Yeah, I think it's really just reviewing section 2.1 and the definition of a significant activity to see if that, at which I'm happy to pull that up for you if you wanted to look at that again, that particular section, or if you'd like to see it first and then.
Yeah, you might as well, since we're going to have this question on the next two.
I mean,
two
it's,
as well.
you know, it's an existing commercial lot.
Do you want, I have it, do you want me to, or do
You
you
have it right there. I did close it. I have to reopen it if you don't have it readily available. Otherwise, I can get it right here.
Right,
Thank you, Kayla.
yeah. So this is section 2.1.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and this is what we, you know, what a significant activity. So we've got deposition or removal, an activity that precipitously changes natural channel or may inhibit natural dynamics in a water course. Any activity that diminishes the natural capacity of an inland wetland or water course to support fisheries, wildlife, or other biological life, etc. So you can read. So
Yeah, I don't see it needing any of those seven, frankly,
Mm.
based on what I've seen.
It's certainly a significant project, but it's not a impact.
yeah, so you know, if they're leaving the building, I think what obviously we'll want to know is the change in impervious surface, if there is any. That will be something we'll want to know from the applicant at some point. But I think if they're just kind of rehabbing, renovating and this existing area, assuming they have best practices for construction, that should be okay.
Are they expanding the parking area itself?
It looks, I
There is,
I think they must be. Right?
right, and the extent of that clearing or that expansion within the upland review area, I am unclear because I don't have an existing conditions
What it
survey.
was, what it is.
Yeah.
So I really need to see that. I mean, either way, it's a regulated activity that falls under your jurisdiction, whether it's the Neck River or, you know, the little wetland to the south of the property. There isn't, you know, an extensive parking lot on the property currently.
Right.
That will all be ripped up for the new septic system and
Right. And then they're gonna put the new. parking.
accommodate whatever, additional parking they can fit.
Right. Okay, so my sense is that we will walk this, but not deem it a significant activity.
That's my feeling.
Anybody want to have a different feeling?
I agree.
Okay, great. So, well, I move that we add application 23-43 251 Boston Post Road to our site walk for the month of July.
Second,
Martin seconds. All in favor? Raise your hand, say aye. Unanimous.
Aye.
Okay, so our next application is 23-44 128 Chittenden Field Lane. This is another
An application that falls within an inland wetland,
right,
a delineated inland wetland.
right. And Aaron has already recommended, I think rightly so, that we do a site walk.
Right, and so this the proposed project includes the narrative details the removal of an existing foundation within the inland wetland. Historically, there were accessory structures on the property within inland wetlands. The inland wetland boundary was redelineated this year and substantially changed the extent of inland wetlands on the property. And so this is an accessory structure that is being proposed on piers for living space with underground connection, water and sewer to utilize the existing septic system on the property. So there is activity within the inland wetlands, and it is in the form of removal of some impervious area and then the construction of the building. I can show you briefly what that looks like. Again, I don't have an existing conditions survey. We only have a proposed site development plan from an engineer. So I can't tell you where within this area is the existing foundation or debris to be removed. This was the original inland wetland boundary on the property, which was redelineated by Richard Snarsky in January of this year. That brought the line out to here in the yard. So now a lot of the existing lawn area is delineated in the wetlands, and this is a new structure that is being proposed with an elevated deck here, which does come into the inland wetlands. And so I guess the question is this considered a significant activity as it is located within the inland wetlands, or would you not deem this to be a significant activity?
I know there's not an existing survey, but that area there is, what's there now? Have you been out there, Aaron? Do you know what's
There's
what's
lawn
there?
in the backyard. It's existing lawn.
Even in that area on the top? Where they're,
You mean the area where the proposed building is?
yes, yes.
There's
Isn't that where you said that they took out the,
lawn. Edge of lawn kind of goes like this.
Is there a reason they're putting it there and not back where there's just lawn? And
You mean somewhere else?
yeah,
Those are questions for the applicant.
yeah, but
Don't have an answer to that. Perhaps septic related, trying to utilize the existing septic. It could be design preference.
where are the foundations that they're removing though, I guess is what my question is.
I don't know. I know there was a non-conforming shed that was back in somewhere in this area
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah.
before some work had been done to the main house in years back. And so now this is a second project here. There's existing patio and landscaped area, but this 15 by 20 foot structure that they're calling a boathouse apartment, which is not an apartment. There's a half bath only in it and no kitchen. But it is elevated, it is in a flood zone. So it's a flood zone of 12, which means your existing grade here, you're down at 5 and your first floor is going to be up at 13. So that's why there's extensive staircase to get up to this building because it is elevated.
so getting back to your first question on, is this a significant activity? I guess, they want to build a building partway into and in the wetland.
Mhm.
I tend to think because that's activity in the wetland, and even if it would be on piers, it's still a discharge into the wetland. I think that would deem as significant.
Yeah, and there's construction. I mean, you'd be construction activity all right there. So I agree with Anna. I think this would be a significant activity.
Okay.
But we, this is an agency, so other thoughts? I mean, we need to vote on this, So I'll make a motion. I move that we deem application 23-44, 128 Chittenden Field Lane a significant activity.
Second,
All right, got a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
I,
Okay, so we are agreed that that is a significant activity.
For a public hearing on August 7th as well?
Sure. I had nothing else that night.
You thought this and last meeting were long.
I know. Well, we're gonna wrap this one up. We have to beat last month.
Yeah, that's for sure.
We're
Are
okay.
we gonna do a site walk to this one?
Yep. So
Okay.
I
Yes.
move that we add 23-44, 128 Chittenden Field Lane to our July sidewalk.
And just
Go ahead.
while you're on
Well,
the subject as well, I'd just ask if you would briefly go through 7.6 and
okay.
I'm
Well, so
all
let
of
me
those are of interest. as well.
I just made a motion to add it to the sidewalk.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. All in favor of adding Chittenden Field? Yes, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we have deemed this application a significant activity, which means that we also need to give the applicant a heads up about oh, you already did. Yes, section 7.6. So we have site plans, but I think we need more information about maybe what's coming out, right?
Right. So basically you can deem that you can excuse any of these from your, specific requirements if you feel it's not necessary to determine risk or detrimental impacts.
Okay, so we're just looking to exclude anything.
If there's anything that you found wasn't necessary.
I don't think any should be excluded.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think we don't have very much information about this site, at least as submitted. Perhaps they would want to change the location. Okay. So our last receipt is application 23-4647 Deepwood Drive. It's a installation of a 21-foot round above ground pool within
Another,
a wetland, or it's just within in the wetland, or within.
this is another situation where the property owner has a survey of the property here. That was from 2019 that shows an approximate edge of inland wetlands with wetlands on this side here. The property owner had the inland wetlands flagged on site, which include these numbers here coming through directly across most of the rear yard. So while I know that I've been out to the site with the property owner, Maria and I, and so there's a water course down gradient, and the inland wetland line is not accurate as shown on this survey. However, was field delineated. That being said, the property owner is proposing a pool straddling that wetland line. So half of this pool is within an inland wetland, albeit existing lawn area, and half of the pool is outside of the inland wetland within the upland. So again, you'd
I'm
have
not
to.
seeing that line, Aaron. I'm sorry on what's on
So
the screen.
I apologize. Let me zoom in here. So it's not drawn as a line.
Oh, okay.
You know, I do have to provide comments. This was just received in our office. However, the numbers coincide with the flags from the wetland scientist. There's a 1, 2, 3,
Ah.
4, 5, 6, and then it comes up to 7,
Okay.
8, 9, and again 10. So the wetlands are closer within and bisect this yard area. This is all lawn space.
Okay, thank you.
Around in the inland wetlands. So this is,
So is that his well in the middle of the wetlands?
yes. So these, you know, a lot of these houses in Deepwood predate the
Yeah.
wetland regulations. But this is a, you know, a modern day application before the wetland, before the agency. So really is, you know, going to be a question of location and its appropriateness here. And again, I guess being consistent where activities within the inland wetland versus the upland, and whether or not that's deemed to be a significant activity.
And the only work they're proposing is this may be a stupid question, is the handwritten things that have been added to the plans.
These are existing. The patio and the deck are all existing. What is being proposed is a 21-foot above ground pool.
Okay, so all the stuff on this plan that says proposed, that's from a previous application or something.
This was a septic repair plan that was the only scale drawing for the property that the
Applicant had. That's fine, that's fine.
So I guess, Aaron, your first question is this is in the inland wetland. And is it significant or not? Right? And I guess if we're consistent with, if you are proposing to build or otherwise disturb inland wetland, it seems to fall into the category of significant activity.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
Yep.
Okay. And I do too. I think it's, I mean, if it doesn't, then there's no point in having significant activity. All right, so I will make a motion that we deem the activity being proposed for application 23-46 7 Deepwood Drive a significant activity.
I second.
Any seconds? All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. It's unanimous that it is a significant activity, which means we can, I guess, add this to our August 7th extravaganza of public hearings. And we just recently viewed the inland wetland regulations for 7.6. As for what information we want to know for significant activity work in a wetland. Am I assuming from the commission, especially given the application as it currently stands, that we would want to see answers to most of that?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
or at least
I
comment. Yep.
I have a quick question. Can we ask especially because the previous approximate delineation was done in 2019. Can we ask the applicant to include a discussion as to why the discrepancy? It's relatively recent. I'm just curious. It's a pretty
Yeah.
big change.
I can kind of tell you that in the survey was done, but the information that they pulled from was, it could have been a subdivision map of approximate line. It wasn't field delineated at the time.
Okay.
There's no record on the survey that a soil scientist had gone out and delineated that anytime recently. In fact, there's no reference to where it came from, which is why the property owner had the wetlands delineated now, so they could see.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. And I believe we've already added that to our site walk. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, so section 13. Right? So
Yep.
that's you, Aaron. 22.
Oh, not too much. Just a fairly easy porch, hand dug on the front of a property within 100-foot upland review area. Confidently issued that one.
That's always nice to hear.
That's it. That's the easiest one of the night.
Okay. And then that brings us to 144 Neck Road, our violation. And did Rob Russo? Oh, there he is.
Yes, Bob is here. Thank you for your patience, Bob. I guess this is your punishment for forgetting last month.
I guess so. So again, Bob Russo, soil scientist with CLA Engineers, representing Mr. Boudelier from Neck Road. As you indicated, the violation site. At last month's meeting, I had intended to request on behalf of the applicant a delay in planting vegetation until the fall planting season, as he was interested in requesting changes in the planting of the commission last month, which the commission in part granted. He moved into late spring, early summer, and I think it's probably a better idea to plant those in the fall planting season. Typically, when I'm doing planting plans, I recommend that for trees and shrubs, they be done in the spring or fall periods for greater probability of success, so you don't end up with a lot of dead vegetation out there. And that's the extent of his request, is to just delay the planting until the fall planting season. Same planting, same oversight that I would be doing. Just do it this fall to make sure that the survival chances are increased.
Okay. And is that like September, October?
September, October, exactly.
Okay.
By the end of October, Bob, or the middle?
Till the end of, I would go till the end of October. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's probably safest. Any questions from any of the agency members for Mr. Russo?
No.
Okay. Anybody want to make a motion?
Make a motion that we approve the planting season for this fall for this application.
I'll second that.
Second.
Any discussion? I would just clarify that we would want the planting to take place no later than the end of October. Okay, all in favor? Raise your hand, say aye.
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 Your request is approved.
Thank you all. Have a good night. I know
Thank
you've
you
got a
for
long
your
evening.
patience.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks.
Bye.
Okay, so on to minutes. We have our June 5th minutes, which I did read since I did watch the video. I only found there was a small typo that is not worth mentioning. Did anybody else see anything in the minutes?
Nope.
I thought nicely captured. the meeting in a much shorter version than the actual meeting.
Good.
Okay, so all in favor of approving the minutes from June 5th, 2023?
Aye.
Wait,
Aye.
Aye.
okay. No, so those are approved, sorry.
Yep.
Okay, and then we have the May 13th site walk. Again, are the minutes, reflected what happens, which is mostly walking around. And
Doing these minutes.
those are the best. Any comments, anything to say about those?
No, I move that we approve both sidewalk minutes.
Okay, so Lee is making a motion to approve May 13th and June 17th site walk minutes.
Second.
Got a second? Any discussion? No. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay. So our next is we need to authorize Maria Patola as our land use official as a designated agent of the Madison Inland Wetlands and Water Courses Agency.
Yes, so Maria has recently been appointed. She has gone through quite a number of appointments. So Maria started as our land use assistant and worked extensively with me after John DeLaura's departure. And so in restructuring our department, I had moved her into a land use technician position while we advertised for a land use official, which is essentially a zoning officer and an inland wetlands officer, and to which Maria applied and was our successful candidate. She's going through her certification process for zoning enforcement officer, but has successfully completed her courses with DEEP to be authorized as a designated agent for you. And so it would be helpful at this point to appoint Maria as your authorized agent and still keep me on as an agent as well, because I have agreed to introduce Maria to the agency. And Maria, I have a feeling that your camera is working in the office, but I know you can speak, so you're welcome to introduce yourself to everybody as well. But we'll go through quite a bit of training. And so I'm not just passing the torch over to Maria just yet, but we've been doing a lot of field work and reviewing plans, and Maria's drafted staff resolutions and reports, and is doing a great job catching on to anything useful if I have to share with her, and is looking forward to working with all of you as well. So this is a step in the right direction to finally, share the workload here in our department. Unfortunately, it's still Maria and I, and we're still seeking a third person. But at least she's moving up in this world and doing a good job at it. So happy to have her in the position.
That's great. Well,
Are you
so
still here, Maria?
welcome officially, or unofficially, you've been here for a while.
Forever. Yeah.
You've been here forever. How many years?
So what do we need to do? Do we need to?
It would just be a motion, right, to designate Maria as an appointed agent on behalf of the agency.
Okay. Well, I move that we appoint Maria Patola as our designated agent for the Madison Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Agency.
Second.
A second from Martin. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Unanimous.
She'll be able to sign off on behalf of the agency for, whether or not zoning approvals are, wetland approvals are required for building permits. She would also now be eligible to issue agent approvals. So you'll see her name, and she'll be working, attending your meetings now with me and drafting some staff reports and things like that. And then once she feels confident and ready to move on, you're welcome to remove me as one of your designated agents. However, any of the environmental planning aspects of it, natural resources planning, things of that nature, I've sort of absorbed those roles once we got rid of the environmental planner position. So you won't get rid of me.
Hope
which
not.
is good. Okay. So moving on, in the wetlands chair remarks, Anna, congratulations on Sonia. You didn't get last
you.
month. So that's very exciting. And I don't have anything else. So Aaron or Maria.
Nothing else either.
Make
Okay.
a motion to adjourn.
All right. We
That
have a
didn't take long.
motion.
Is Saturday okay? Can all of you make it?
I can make it.
Yes.
I very likely can. I can probably swing it. Yep.
All
I
right.
believe I can.
I'm gonna second Martin's motion, but yes, I can make it.
Okay, good.
All right, so we had a motion to adjourn in a second. All in favor?
It's
All right.
official.
We're adjourned and hopefully we see everybody on Saturday.
Thank you all.
And we
Bye,
did it
everybody.
last month.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.